Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association, and welcome to This Week at Work.
This Week at Work is the only show about the workplace that offers you front row seats and a microphone, featuring experts in human resources and employment law to bring you practical, timely, and accurate insights so you can more effectively lead your organization. It's Thursday, November 16th, episode 257. Today, for over half a century, 911 has been a lifeline for Americans during their most challenging moments. But how often do citizens think about what's happening on the receiving end of the phone during, after, or even before placing that call? Well, this week, AIM's member spotlight is on Jason Nettles, the Executive Director of Central County Emergency 911, as we dispel some myths about emergency dispatch and learn how this organization navigates the common and not so common challenges of their workplace. And we'll have all this and more on This Week at Work.
All right, welcome back, everyone. It's good to be back, Bert. Thank you so much for covering me last week. I appreciate that help. I hear you and Tanya had a very good conversation.
We did. Welcome back, Phil. Tanya and I had a great conversation about navigating conflict, and she had some great questions during my Lawyer on the Clock segment. Not to outdo you or anything, but she was great.
No, she does a great job. Well, you know, she does have a law degree. She's an extremely smart lady, a great question asker. We're happy and so lucky to have her as part of our AIM team. I know the members that she works with, they really enjoy working with her. The problem is if I could just clone her like 5 times, we'd be in great shape. But Tanya does a great job. Tanya, if you're listening, thank you so much for being a part of the program last week. Let's see. I know we have a special guest today, a AIM member, an Ogletree client, Jason Nettles. Good morning, Jason, with Central County 911. How are you today?
Good. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yep, we are happy to have you. I got a load of questions for you. I'm going to encourage some audience participation. If you have questions for our executive director of the Central County 911, please go ahead and submit those now. And let's get ourselves warmed up with some poll questions as well. Here's the first poll question. How often does Central County 911 dispatch a fire or EMS unit on average? 1 every 30 seconds, 1 every 2.5 minutes, 1 every 2.5 hours, about 5 a day. So take a guess. Let's hear your best answer. And again, if you have questions, put those into the chat and we'll be sure to share those with Jason. The second question also today is, and my favorite, the word cloud. How do you think a dispatcher would describe their job in one word? How does a dispatcher describe their job in one word?
We got to keep it clean, right, Phil? Keep it clean.
Well, producer Nick is in the background. I think he's got the ability to do that. But we're not asking the dispatchers to describe it. We're asking you to describe it. My word is going to be stressful.
Mine too.
I think it would be very stressful for me, and we're going to get Jason's opinion on that once we get some answers in here as well. Bert, are you ready for Lawyer on the Clock? A lot of activity going on out there right now.
As always, let's roll it.
All right. I'm giving you 6 minutes, Bert. Let's see what you can do. Lawyer, you are on the clock. Pull that lever, Nick.
All right, it's time to look into what's trending in employment law. Lawyer, you're on the clock.
Phil, when I start Lawyer on the Clock today, I've got a question for you first. Did you happen to visit?
You're always trying to trick me up.
Did you happen to visit Starbucks today?
I got my star. It's empty as well. Now, I'm trying to support the cause. I hear they have some activity going on.
They did. Today's Red Cup Day. Were you aware of that?
I only because I heard about it on the radio, but I'm not sure what Red Cup means. I mean, I'm familiar with the Red Nose Day. Now we have Red Cup Day. Tell me
you're
about
wearing red in honor of
I'm
Red
wearing
Cup
red.
Day.
Well, I'm getting ready to go to Indiana. As soon as I leave here at noon, I have to speak to a SHRM audience there. So I'm wearing the AIM colors. Consider this uniform, Bert. It's like a tie for a lawyer.
Caffeinate up on the way. Get some more Starbucks. Today's Red Cup Day, and if anyone orders a any size handcrafted holiday or fall beverage, either hot, iced, or blended, they will receive a free grande. That's a 16-ounce Starbucks. So this is Red Cup Day. This is their biggest day of the year. And, of course, you may ask yourself, Phil, you might ask me, why in the world are you talking for Starbucks and giving them an advertisement on our program?
Or why in the world are you talking for Starbucks and giving them an advertisement?
You're brilliant. You're brilliant. Well, today there's a big issue going on because there are Starbucks baristas at more than 200 locations nationwide who are intending to strike during the company's busy Red Cup Day promotion today. So there's significant activity going on. We all know that that many Starbucks locations around the country have unionized over the past few years, and those workers at the unionized locations, and frankly, some of the non-unionized locations, are contemplating striking. In fact, nearly 2 years after the union first won an election at a Starbucks store, 360 of Starbucks' roughly 9,000 company-owned locations have voted to unionize. No location has come close to a collective bargaining agreement with Starbucks yet. Keep that in mind.
Oh, really? That's very interesting. 360, none of them are even close to a collective bargaining unit agreement.
Correct.
I wonder how many of the employees that voted are still working at those Starbucks today. That'd be an interesting fact, wouldn't it?
That would be, yeah. And again, I think the significant fact there, Phil, is, excuse me, not just the 360 stores of the 9,000, which by my math is roughly what, 0.3%? Is that right? If I'm doing my math correctly, it's 9,000. Well, 3%, I guess. So you could do the math for me, but I think the significant number there is that this is more than 2 years after the first union won an election at a Starbucks.
Your math is pretty close, Bert. Well done.
3%. All right.
It's
So 3%,
about 4% almost. Yeah.
All right. 4% of the Starbucks stores are unionized. And the first one unionized 2 years ago, and none of them have contracts yet. And I think that's what a big reason of the strike is to put some pressure on the company on their biggest day of the year, on Red Cup Day, to tell Starbucks, sit down, bargain contracts with the employees, and get moving here. So Starbucks in the news for you today. Let's shift gears, Phil, if you don't mind. I want to chat about the Supreme Court real quickly. And
I hear now, before you do that, I hear there was a big Supreme Court victory here in this great state of Missouri, Bert.
There was. I appreciate you.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. Yes, as our listeners from last week know, I talked about it on the program that I had the opportunity, a great opportunity, to argue my first case during my career in front of the Missouri Supreme Court. About 2 months ago, actually, in late September. And the issue had to deal with arbitration agreements. And the court considered two specific issues. They ruled on one of them in my favor, which meant they didn't need to rule on the second one. And the specific issue in that case was whether there was a valid arbitration agreement in the particular case. And the court analyzed and determined, yes, there was a valid arbitration agreement. And then because that valid arbitration agreement contained what's called a delegation clause, which delegates to the arbitrator to determine whether there is an enforceable arbitration agreement. So again, two different concepts, validity and enforceability. Yeah. The court determined it was valid, which means there is a contract. And then the arbitrator will get to decide whether the contract is enforceable or not. Kind of a fine legal distinction. I feel like I'm on really solid footing because the court specifically left intact the only two cases on the point on enforceability that go in my favor. So they did not overrule those two cases that go in my favor. And so I feel very comfortable that Supreme Court victory is going to be a huge victory for my client. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Phil.
Absolutely. There you go. The great Burt Garland. If you have an employment law issue, look him up today at Ogletree Deacons. He's one of the great shareholders here in the St. Louis office. Great job, Burt. Really proud of you there. Yeah.
Appreciate it, Bill. I thank you. So yeah, let's chat real quickly about what the Supreme Court did with respect to a New Jersey COVID vaccine mandate. Remember COVID vaccine mandates, Phil? I think it's how we got started.
Is that still a topic? Is that still a topic?
So in this case, 4 New Jersey nurses failed to convince the U.S. Supreme Court to hear their case challenging a now rescinded state mandate requiring healthcare workers to get a COVID-19 vaccine booster shot. This just happened this past Monday. The nurses in that case had received their initial vaccine, but they declined additional booster shots for various reasons, including, and I'm going to quote this, their, quote, fundamental rights of privacy, bodily integrity, and the liberty to refuse unwanted medical treatments, end quote. Now, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with the state that the appeal was moot because the governor in that state, Governor Murphy, had since revoked the executive order. But the appeals court then remanded the case to the district court to determine whether the entire lawsuit was moot. The state's motion to throw out the entire case remains pending. So the case is not fully concluded yet. It is possible it could work its way back up through the Court of Appeals into the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's 2000 decision in a case called Friends of the Earth versus Laidlaw Environmental requires that it must be absolutely clear for the allegedly wrongful behavior could not reasonably be expected to recur for a matter to be moot. And so here, because the governor had rescinded the vaccine booster mandate, the Supreme Court declined to take the case. So I think, again, whether the entire lawsuit is moot or not might make its way back up. Of course, people who are in favor of the vaccine mandates are heralding this case as a massive win, but I don't think it's quite as massive of a win for those folks as they think. It's really just the Supreme Court decided not to hear the case at this time. I don't think we've heard the last of it.
All right. Well, we'll keep our ears open for future decisions and noise in that area as well.
Phil, I know when you head over to Indianapolis today, you won't be making your way all the way up north to Chicago, but you will be traversing the state of Illinois, correct?
I will be, yes. And maybe I'm going to have to accrue some hours for my paid time off, yeah?
Well, yeah, that would be under the Illinois Paid Leave for All Workers Act.
But not until next year.
Yep, not until next year, which by the way, Phil, pales in comparison to what Chicago has just done to employers in their fine city. So on November 9th, the Chicago City Council adopted the Chicago Paid Leave and Paid Sick and Safe Leave Ordinance, which expands the current Chicago Paid Leave Ordinance to provide eligible employees, get this one, the ability to earn 40 hours of paid leave and I stress and 40 hours of paid sick leave every 12 months. That's 80 hours. That's 2 weeks that employers will be forced to provide employees paid time off in a separate bank of paid sick leave every 12 months.
Yeah. And it's when you think about that, my theory is they're doing what they can to attract people to the city of Chicago. Right. Well, I mean, they're doing all they can to try and get people to come into the city or to stay in the city and to appeal to those voting population of the city, obviously, is part of their duty, I think, as a public servant. But that type of thing on top of the minimum wage that they've implemented for restaurant for those servers and different things. I think it's going up to $15 or $16 an hour. I just don't know who's going to afford the vacation there, eat there, stay there, and deal with the outcome of that additional expense.
Well, obviously, they're trying to appeal to voters and trying to get voters a material benefit, which would be great. But as we all know, that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And the question will be whether businesses end up leaving the city and therefore they don't employ people in the city of Chicago. So that'll remain to be seen how that pans out. I do think what's really interesting about this law in particular is just like the Illinois Paid Leave for All Workers Act, this law is clearly targeted at employers in the restaurant and retail industry. The fact of the matter is that most employers that aren't in the restaurant and retail industry do provide a form of paid leave, paid time off, paid vacation. Usually it's at least a week, maybe it's a couple of weeks. And so they may already be in compliance with this law. But traditionally, restaurant and retail sectors do not provide these types of benefits. And so that's the industry. Those are the two industries where this is really going to hit hard.
Yeah, and I got nothing against anybody that needs and wants the benefits. I want them to have it. That's not my position. My position is how we afford it.
Yep.
And that, it eventually all gets passed along. Anything else, Bert, from your side of things? If not, I want to get on to our interview with Jason. I'm excited to hear a little bit about the behind the scenes workings of Central County 911 and what organizations are doing around the country.
Let's shift gears over to Jason.
All right, great. Thank you, Bert. Stay on with us. I know you have questions as well. Jason, welcome again to the program. We're happy to have you. Thank you for all that you do to help the St. Louis County area and the great work that you do to provide safety and service to our community. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Jason. Where'd you come from? How'd you end up where you're at? And then let's get into some of the details of 911.
Thank you again. I'm happy to be here. Well, my public safety career started in 1990. I'm a native Floridian, so most of my career was spent in Florida. I didn't get my advanced degree until later in life. I didn't go to college right after high school. I started doing normal things and trying to just live life, got married, so forth. I did go back to college, got my advanced degree. I have a bachelor's degree in organizational management, and then I continued on and got a master's degree in critical incident management. So they're related to, governmental management, organizational management, emergency management, that type of coursework. 7 years ago, my wife and I decided to make a move, and we ended up in the Mountain West, spent 4 years in Colorado. Decided to move on from there because of the cold and the snow and opportunities for our family. And we ended up here in St. Louis. A position came open here at Central County 911, and I applied. And so here I am. So I'm coming up on my 3-year anniversary here. And very happy to be here. Things are going very well.
We're happy to have you. I know Bert and I have had a chance to meet you at some of the programs that we have here at AIM that I know you and your organization partake in, and we're happy to have you as a member of AIM, and I believe a client of Ogletree as well. So it's a double whammy for Bert and I today. We're both happy to have you on the program. Can you tell us a little bit about how the fire and ambulance dispatch really works with the public?
Yeah, so it's a little different depending on what community you're in and where you're in around the country. It's not exactly the same in every community. So a little bit about us as an organization. We provide service to about 912,000 residents across mostly St. Louis County, which is, the area outside the city limits of St. Louis. We also provide service over into Franklin County to Merrimack Ambulance District. Our service area is about 720 square miles. We're a very busy center. In the metropolitan areas around the country, you'll see fire, ambulance, and police dispatch normally is separated. They're not normally combined in the same center. In the rural areas around the country, where call volume is less, demands are less on public services, generally you'll see combined centers where they do law enforcement, fire, and ambulance all within the same building or same facility. So there's different models depending on where you're at around the country. But here in the St. Louis region, what we have specifically in St. Louis County, if somebody dials 911 from either a landline phone, voice over IP phone, or their cell phone, which is now over 80% of our calls are cell phone, they get routed to a police 911 center. And once the police call taker determines that, it's a fire, ambulance, emergency, they will generally transfer the call to us. There are 2 other smaller dispatch centers that do fire and ambulance in St. Louis County, but we're the largest and have the largest footprint. We support 34 different fire and ambulance departments. Some of those are municipal departments. So very busy. And if you look at
Jason,
yeah.
if I can, I know you talk about being very busy. Nick, can you put up on the screen for the audience to see what we mean by very busy? When I saw this slide, Jason, I was shocked with how busy it is. And this might be a hint to our participants on our online poll of how many calls are taken on average. Can you talk a little bit about this slide?
If you look back at 2018, our organization had about 143,000 total calls. And most of our calls are ambulance EMS related. Roughly 80-something% are ambulance EMS related. The others are fire and hazmat, that type of call. But then if you look down at 2022, you can see we're at almost 165,000 calls. And then this year.
So Jason, so just to be clear, this does not include the police calls. The police calls are routed elsewhere.
That's correct. This is fire and ambulance calls only. So medical emergencies, house fires, car fires, things like that. Yeah. Wow. And then you can see we're on pace for about 172,000 calls this year. So our call volume has increased about 35.5% since 2019, and we haven't added any staff. We have the same number of full-time equivalent dispatchers, and that's 36 dispatchers and supervisors are what we're authorized for. And we're going to be adding a couple of additional positions next year because of our demands and our call volume.
Do you know what this huge increase is attributable to?
There's nationwide trends for increased demands or for public service. It's not just us. You look around the country, it's kind of the same trends.
I would have to assume some of that's an aging population on some degree. I know a few people that are near and dear to me that have had to use that service as they've gotten older and they needed help with something. Maybe they've fallen, they don't have someone to help them get up. So they call the ambulance service, fire department to help them get back up out of bed or wherever they've, ended up in trouble.
So it's a really difficult question to answer because the increased call volume, and like I said, this is a trend around the country, not just here for us. The increased call volume and demands for fire and EMS service is disproportionately higher than the increase in actual population. So you've really got to dig into the data and try to look at trends and that kind of thing. We definitely have the picture there that the demands are significantly increased from where they were a number of years ago.
Jason, so it's interesting because, again, I asked the question about whether it reflects police calls or not, but, we know that crime has rapidly increased in the country the last couple of years, really, since post-COVID. Things are really kind of out of hand in many communities. And do you attribute any of this increase in the need for EMS and fire to the increased crime?
Not necessarily, but we're seeing things. Some of our staff was kind of joking the other day. We weren't really joking because it was serious, but we were discussing the fact that we're seeing things like overdoses at 9 o'clock in the morning, where in the past that would only be a weekend nighttime thing. We're seeing shootings in the morning where you wouldn't see that type of thing during the week, during the daytime, during normal work hours, only on weekends. At night, that kind of thing. So it's really difficult to. There's definitely been a cultural change, and like you said, definitely an increase in call volume and the way things are going around the country.
So I hadn't thought of that.
It's worse in metropolitan areas than it is in a lot of the rural communities.
I hadn't thought of that about, is some of the increase attributable to the legalization of marijuana in Missouri?
I haven't really seen anything specifically that's pointed directly at that yet, but I think time will tell whether that is really going to make a difference or not.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
Jason, let's look at this slide here because I'm curious about the increase in the number of calls. You've held your staffing consistent. Congratulations, just as a business leader. I know how difficult that is to do when your business is under high demands. It's not easy. I'd like to hear about, Nick, if you can pull up the word cloud first. I would like to start there of, what are some of the challenges of running a 911 service? And, what's the stressor on the employees? What does it take to be an employee there? You can brag a little bit about the great job I know that they do, and we're all thankful for that they're there when we need them.
Yeah, we have an incredibly talented staff here at our organization. And if you look at 911 professionals around the country, one of the things that has been going on over the last couple of years is a push to have dispatchers and call takers recognized as first responders, because what that does is opens up other avenues for things like mental health access and those type of things, because the stress of the call volume is one thing, but the type of calls that 911 dispatchers and call takers deal with is just something that the average citizen probably is not aware of or doesn't understand. It can be nonstop from one call right to the next. You may take a child with a high fever needing an ambulance, one call, and then the next thing it's someone's grandma's having a cardiac arrest. And then the next call, somebody just got hit by a car, and then you're right onto a house fire. It's really all over the place. So that type of, that stress after years sort of builds up. And if we don't manage those things appropriately and make sure that we have services, EAP, things like that, people to be able to talk to counselors, those are all important things in helping us manage that. So we pay very close attention to those things. And whenever we have, what I would consider hot calls or newsworthy type incidents, that may be a little bit outside the norm, we always check in with our staff to make sure they're doing okay and see if they need anything. That's very important to us.
So,
I'm sure
Jason, did I hear you correctly that the 911 dispatchers are not considered to be first responders?
Yeah, so nationwide they are not. If you look at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, dispatchers and 911 operators are categorized as clerical staff. Which means they have to work much longer for retirement. There's a lot of things that are at play when it comes to that. Some states have taken action, and the state of Missouri this year did. The governor signed that into law, where dispatchers in the state of Missouri are recognized as first responders. It really didn't change anything necessarily related to retirement or any pay or anything like that, but what it did is official recognition to say, yes, these are not clerical workers like they've traditionally been recognized as, but it did open up, specifically in Missouri, to some funds related to mental health, counseling, and things like that.
So tell me, Jason, what are the challenges in hiring and maintaining a staff of 911 workers?
Yeah, so again, there are some nationwide organizations. We have APCO, the Association for Public Safety Communications Officials. That's a nationwide organization that has some standards. We also have NENA, the National Emergency Number Association. That's the 911 organization, if you will. They set a lot of standards related to technology, training, staffing, and that sort of thing. I'm a Missouri first vice president of the Missouri chapter of NENA, so pretty active in those industry organizations. But looking at training nationwide, it's a little bit different in every community because each community has certain needs. They may have different CAD systems. They may have different telephone systems. Geography is different. So training and bringing somebody on that doesn't have any background in public safety or knowledge about it is pretty challenging. And it may take up to a year in some organizations in order to get somebody totally up to speed and through a training program and where they're really on their own and being able to function as a call taker or a dispatcher. So it just depends. We can put somebody through the call taking phase so that they can start functioning in that area in as little as like 90 days. But it really takes at least that long from the day we bring somebody on in order to get them working and counting as a full-fledged member of our staff. So that's the challenge. Is really the training is pretty intense around the country.
Now, I need to address one thing. I don't mean to come from left field here, but sometimes I'll hear about something in the news where somebody had a 911 call somewhere around the country, and they had to sit on hold for 15 minutes. I don't know, maybe I'm in exaggeration mode of 15 minutes, but they get put on hold. That's the real news they're trying to make. Is that, I'm assuming that is measured and monitored, and how is that addressed, or is that really just the media trying to create something that's really not accurate?
I think these are what I would consider low frequency, high acuity events that end up, in the news, if you will. And there are some areas around the country where staffing is at what I would consider critical levels. We've even got some here in the St. Louis region that are not far from critical levels. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's not one single individual reason or a solution to solve that. It's what I would consider a complete package. It's not just pay. It's not just organizational management. There's a lot of reasons for that. So it really takes a complete package in order to make sure that you have fully staffing. But there are some communication centers around the country that are critically short-staffed. And when I say that, some of them are down as much as like 40% of what their full authorized staffing be. So recruiting and training and keeping keeping staff is really a challenge around the country.
I'm sure that is, with one just being as stressful it is. It's almost a little bit like the dilemma we have with school teachers, right? I mean, school teachers are under great pressure and demand. Everyone believes they should make more money. I very seldom meet someone who doesn't agree with that. We need them to be there to educate our children and to create the future. But we really don't stand up and put our money where our mouth is there. It sounds like that may be some of the situation in some of these places with 911 as well.
Yeah, so our organization has done a few things to try to set us apart a little bit from some of the other, recognizing that this is a nationwide issue. Our board of directors, our governance model is we have a board of directors, and they've set some policy that basically says they want us to be the industry leaders in our region when it comes to the most attractive place to come to work for our industry. So they've done some things very creative, like we pay 100% of our employee and family health care premiums. So that's huge. And then we have deductible reimbursement. Yeah, we have a deductible reimbursement program, things like that. So the employees don't have to really stress or be concerned about that type of thing. And that just kind of is another benefit that adds to make us a little more creative and hopefully more competitive when it comes to comparing us to the other people in our area.
I mean, that's a huge benefit. I mean, that's hundreds of dollars a month, thousands of dollars a year in many cases for some people, a savings that they would have to overcome, with a base pay. Anything else you want to say, Jason, before we get going? We've run a few minutes over here. That how would someone, if they were interested in applying, what's the right process for them to go through to learn more about becoming a dispatcher?
We use a couple of national tools that are recognized that other organizations use similar for screening. Basically just confirming skills, typing skills, things like are you a good multitasker, things like that. A lot of common sense type things. So that's an initial screening thing that we do, and then we have a interview process and so forth that we go through in order to bring people on.
I think that's good. Bert, I'm sorry, just disqualified you. He used typing skills and common sense. Sorry, Bert, you just stick into lawyering practice here.
Wow.
Jason, would love to have you. Would love to have you back on and talk a little bit more about Central County 911. I think it's something all of our listeners around the country can relate to. It's not a St. Louis specific thing. We all depend on it. We're thankful for the people that are doing it. I hope some of your team is listening. We're grateful for that in our community and the communities that we serve in. So thank you very much, Bert. I appreciate the update. You know, of course, I love you, Bert. I'm just kidding when I say those things.
Of course.
You have great typing skills. Anyway, but we do appreciate that. We will be back on air next week at 7:30 Central Time. We'll see you then. Until then, go out and be good to somebody.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your colleagues. Forward our invites. Share the link aimea.org/This Week at Work, or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment, like LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere you are. And you can be part of the show. Send your questions and comments anytime to info@thisweek.work. We'll see you next week, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, when we discuss what's happening this week at work.